Well, officially welcome to the Cricket in the Cabin podcast with your host, me, Randall Clay. Ever since I was actually kind of a kid, the only thing I've ever wanted to do is to have a microphone. Just know that everything I say, these are my opinions, and that I am a complete idiot, and that most of what I say is bullshit. It's the single, greatest act of love that I've ever received. All in, man. Shit, I mean, that might just be the intro. I just started talking just to see where it went. That might be the actual intro. I was about to start recording for the podcast here, and I have a playlist that I've been curating for a while. And it is a playlist that I listen to. I was listening to it right before I would do the comedy shows. And it's kind of like the put in the work and see what happens, believe in yourself, feel good kind of music. Right now it only has 8 songs that's selected, but they are 10,000 Hours by Macklemore and Ryan Lewis, Lose Yourself by Eminem, What's Up Danger by Blackway and Black Caviar, Fight Song by Rachel Platten, Hall of Fame by The Script and will.i.am, World's Greatest by R. Kelly, Made for This by Sat Song, but it's spelled Sat Sang in case you want to look that up. And I recently just added I Believe I Can Fly by R. Kelly because I remember listening to this song when I was a kid for the first time to the Space Jam intro. And when you listen to it for the first time as a kid, you felt like you could easily dunk from the free throw line and that you could call down a Megazord, from the sky, or that you could literally do anything. And I added it to the playlist, but then I actually listened to the words of it. So what I'm going to do is before I start, I've already listened to this song once, then I'm about halfway through it again. What I'm going to do is before I actually do this podcast is I'm going to re-listen to this song, and then we're going to start it. So I'm going to encourage you, because I know that you're listening to this on either YouTube, Apple, or Spotify, because that's the only places I'm releasing it, and all of them have access to this song. If you don't, for whatever reason, YouTube does. Pause this podcast, and go listen to this song. All of it. And let's come back and talk about it for a second. I'm going to restart it. And I'll probably edit out me sitting here for 6 minutes. And then you're going to see me in probably 2 seconds from now. So I originally had a plan, again, for how this episode is going to be structured. As I do spend a lot of time preparing and planning for these episodes, because one thing that I guarantee is that if I put this stamp on it, the touch blue make a true stamp, the triple stamp, double stamp on it, then it's quality. And I always want to put out good content, and I don't ever want to rush content, and I don't ever want to be someone that's just putting out something just to say I put something out on that day, So here we are. We're a little later than what we wanted, but I'm not beating myself up about that. But I had an outline of how I wanted to start this podcast as well, and I had an outline, and I wanted to end with a certain point. But I think I'm going to start with that now because I don't think I can get through the rest of everything I want to talk about, knowing that this is coming on the horizon. I think I'd rather get this out of the beginning. I'm still listening to I Can Fly, it's still playing in the background, instead of listening to my own voice right now. And that's why I wanted to start with this part, is because kind of how I wanted to highlight this next person is I do want to say and admit that you'll hear me say that this thing saved my life, or this got me through a dark side, those kind of things. Also, disclosure, we're about to get into a heavy topic. So if you want to skip to the next topic, there's timestamps down at the bottom. But like I said, we're always going to be raw and be real, and know that I'm being delicate and speaking of my own experiences. I think that is what helps, and I think that people don't always do that. But anyway, so I was in I'm trying to think of how to word all this. When I was in my lowest and my worst spot, it was about 6 months after Christian passed away. And there was a day I was at work, and I can't remember the fine details. It was something like, work started at 9. My boss had a meeting. She ended up getting there around like 9:30 or something, and she walked in, and within seconds she could just see that something was wrong. So she just said, "Hey, come talk to me in my office in a minute or whatever." So I went in, and I can't speak highly enough of this woman. And she just asked me about like what's going on, how am I doing, and and we've always had a very open relationship because she was that kind of person that just kind of gets that information out of everybody, you know. So I was explaining how I was feeling and what I was going through, and just how down and in a dark place that I was, and how I just wasn't able to function. And she and then she kept talking, and then she eventually we started like kind of laughing a little bit. She got me to laugh a little bit, and then she asked me if I did want to go home for the day, and I absolutely did. And she let me, or while we were talking, but then she set some parameters. And she was like, "Okay, well, here's the rules though if you're going to go home." And she goes, "If I text you, then you have if I text you, then you only have 5 minutes to respond to me, or I'm going to send in the National Guard." And this type of a woman, you don't question that. Like, she literally would have done that. But I negotiated, and I was like, let's do 30 minutes because I'll probably eventually end up playing video games, and rounds take often like 30 minutes. And so we settled on 30 minutes. Um, and then she said to make sure that her threat was viable, she took my address down, even though I think it was in the system, but she still took my address down. And she goes, "Look, I have this, and I'm telling you, if I text you, I'm starting a timer, and it's not from the time you receive it." It was just really funny. It was really funny. So she did let me go, and I drove home. I think I stopped and got a bottle of tequila, to be honest. Started drinking, which was my normal thing at that time, was to drink an insane amount of tequila. And so I went home, and I was there for, it literally wasn't 2 minutes by the time I got there, and I got a text her, and I texted right back. I was like, "I'm good. I just got home." And she was just like, have a good day, take care of yourself, do whatever you need to do, and gave me different numbers for like the hotlines and things like that. And she didn't just she definitely took care of me and prepared me for everything. And then it wasn't too long after that I started I think I started playing a video game, and I got a text on my phone, and it was weird. Like, I didn't really understand it, and it said something about like your DoorDash has been picked up or something, and I was like, okay, whatever. Like, because I used to order DoorDash a lot, but I also didn't have it, and sometimes you get like those texts like where it is like a text that's late or something. So I was like, whatever. I just ignored it, and then it was like 20 minutes later that I got another text, and it said like your DoorDash has been dropped off. So I, walked over, opened my door, and outside of my house, outside of my apartment door, was like 4 giant bags of groceries. I'm talking everything. There was burritos and pizzas, and there was, cheese, eggs, milk. Uh, I think there was like sparkling waters, and then I think there was, I want to say that there was even like toothpaste. There was like everything you can possibly think of, like four giant bags of groceries, and in in the darkest and in the moments where I couldn't see a tomorrow, and I didn't envision a tomorrow, and I didn't plan for a tomorrow. What she did in that moment was it's the single like greatest act of love that I've ever received from someone that didn't have to do something and then did something insanely cool. Because I think it's, it's usually a well-known thing, like if you are, super depressed and you're going through stuff like, you're not always buying groceries, and especially if you're a single male, we got the condiments but no, nothing else. But it was the fact, just the way that she orchestrated it. She had my address. She confirmed that I was home to like receive a delivery, and then she sent me all the things that I needed to actually like be able to have a foundation and, to build off of. And I literally grabbed the groceries, and while putting them away, I was bawling, absolutely bawling my eyes out. Um, and then after, I remember putting them all away, and I just laid on the floor and just cried for a long time. Anyway, I say that because I actually reached out to her and confirmed that I could talk about this, and she said, at first she was like, "No, I don't want any credit." And I was like, "I know that's not what it's about, and it's not about giving credit. It's about kind of adding on to last episode as to if there's something you can do. Man, you want to talk about a life changing moment, a life changing moment. Someone that doesn't have to care, and like not only was it, gonna send a send food, like a McDonald's run or whatever. These are groceries, and it's important because what it does is it like I said, provides a foundation for you to have, but it also provides you a plan. It provides you a, I'm gonna eat this for dinner. I'm gonna eat this for breakfast. I'm gonna take this with me for lunch tomorrow to work. It provides you a way to like look into the future. And then also is just the gratitude of all of this. Well, now I have to use it, and I just can't explain the moment enough and what it did for me. So that is my huge shout out to Shelby. She gets that joke. Um, if you know her, I don't want to. Obviously, I'm not going to dox her or anything, but a lot of people that probably listen to this know her, or even if not, just know that this woman is single-handedly the number one reason that I made it through that time. So I felt that it was right to be able to honor her and share that story, even though she says she doesn't want the credit, but also to give everyone out there a very tangible thing you can do. And to full circle that, I actually did reach out to her yesterday. I'm going to pull my microphone because my AC kicks on, and I did notice you can hear a little bit in the background when my mic does open up, even though it's good about cutting out background noise. I did reach out to her yesterday and just confirm that I could talk about this, and she said she said I could, but she didn't want the credit for it, and multiple times said that. And I told her the impact that it had on me, and she said that she had no idea. And that's another really key moment is you have no idea the impact that you're making on someone. So just always be kind, always talk to people, always, say compliments to people, because you never know what they're battling. You never know what they're going through. And if you know someone that's going through something, you may not have the money to send them groceries or something like that, but man, if you can, that's a really, really fucking cool thing you can do for someone. It really was a life-changing moment. Like I said, I didn't want to start the podcast out this way. I actually wanted to end on that note. But listening to R. Kelly and my playlist right before I start, I always listen to the entire playlist before I start doing this, and I usually have it on right before I start streaming, and it just felt right to throw it in here. So all the love, all the gratitude, and for everyone out there, if you could send up a thought or a prayer or a high five if you know her. Because one, she helped me, and two, I really hope that that example and that thing that she did is a way for people to be able to mimic that and to help save someone else, to put it in the flat out terms that it is. So thank you, buddy. I love you. From both cameras. If you don't get that reference, that's a Wayne's World thing, kind of. I don't know the sound they make, but it's the same, it's similar. But that's how they transition their scenes. That's why we use it here. That was a weird sound. Okay. I feel like my voice is a little stuffy today, but I think it's just because I've been crying. So hopefully that works its way out a little bit as we continue to roll through this. I think I have this camera on, but you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to trust the fact that I already checked it 3 times and it was on, and I'm just going to go with it. If not, we got camera 2, and I know that that one's on because I can see that one over there. Okay. If you know me, and if you don't know me, you're about to know that I have 2 great fears. 2 great fears. I feel like every human has some irrational fears. So if you could let me know your irrational fears down in the comments of wherever you're watching this. But my irrational fears are I do not like to swim in open water or water that I can't see through. I say open water because it's just easier to say, but like even like a lake that's kind of open water, right? I know it's not technically like an ocean, like fully open, but I don't like that. I don't like swimming in non-pools is pretty much what it is. When I was a kid, I was a lot better about it, doing in rivers and lakes and being able to do that. But I was always on edge. And if you really spend time thinking about things, which I spend an insane amount of time, and being gifted with ADHD, I simultaneously think about 19 things at once. So you can get through a lot of material. And I think I can actually remember the moment that that changed for me is when I started like freaking out about like kind of what was in the water. I was on vacation. This is like completely has nothing to do with what I meant to talk about, but here we go. I was on vacation with my mom, my stepdad at the time, my sister, and my sister's boyfriend at the time. We were on vacation going to or from Washington, D.C., or to and from King's Dominion. That might have been the same trip because they're probably in the same area. South Carolina. We probably went to South Carolina and swung. I have no idea. I was a child. I have no idea. But we were swimming in a pool, and my sister's boyfriend was talking to my stepdad. And it was late at night. It was just the 3 of us outside. So it was like a boys' trip. It was late at night and it was dark. And there was like a couple of, like one light in the pool, but it was, the rest of them were kind of busted. So it was pretty dark in the pool. They were outside sitting on, I think that they were outside the pool sitting on like lawn chairs. They might have their feet in the pool or something, but I was swimming in the pool. But I remember I was alone in the pool. And I was swimming around, but I wasn't really listening to like I wasn't engaged in the conversation. It was just kind of happening, and I was just kind of hearing it. I was, swimming and bobbing, coming up. But I remember when I finally engaged and listened to the conversation, my sister's boyfriend was talking about something about someone swimming in a pool and a snake was in the pool. Now, me personally, I don't have an irrational fear of snakes. I have a healthy fear of snakes, but that's just because I have a healthy fear of any animal that can bite me. If you have a dog, I okay, dogs might be a bad example, but even dog, I'm still kind of cautious about dogs. But snakes are fast as hell, dude, and some of them are venomous. So anyway, they started talking about it, and it freaked me out because just thinking about like, oh man, I really couldn't see it because that's how they were talking about like like the snake was in the pool and he didn't see it and it was swimming under the surface, and I was like, dude, fuck this. So I got out of the pool, and I think that I never realized that that's the moment that it just ingrained that scares me. So nowadays, it's gotten worse as I've gotten older, and there's a couple of stories that I do have about being in open water and basically freaking out. I'm trying to get my levels right because I turned my gain up because it wasn't working. If anybody has any pets or animals around that can hear that, they just came like, "What up, dude?" Anyway, so I think that that's where that fear comes from. Anyway, that has nothing to do with my story. My second greatest fear is leaving the country. I think America is a great country. There's a lot here. There's a lot to do. There's a lot to see. I don't need to leave a country. Has nothing to do really with the other country. It's anxiety of mine, my anxiety that I carry of these questions come up immediately is just the idea of I don't know the norms, right? Like I don't know the norms. I could accidentally offend someone, or you could, I don't know, do the wrong thing, say the wrong thing, whatever. You, if you go to a country that doesn't speak your language, then you can't speak the language. Um, you don't know how like the basics of like how the money works. You can get scammed. I don't know. You can get robbed. I have no idea. I don't. It's not like I have a bad image of other countries. It's just that my anxiety would be through the roof because I would just be paranoid. So I just have a fear of leaving the country. So I don't want to do it. I have no desire to do it. When I was in college, though, two of us, me and one of my buddies, I also checked with them about names and they're cool with names. So me and my buddy Jake went to the same college. We were on semesters, and two of our other buddies, Worm and Kiefer, were on quarters. So their spring break happened in January, and it kind of lined up with our like winter break, but not really because we just skipped a class. I think we skipped like Friday and Monday or something. I have no idea, but we skipped some classes to go, so it didn't line up at all. But they called us and they said for their spring break they wanted to go to Niagara Falls. So me and Jake were like, "Yeah, dude, we'll go to Niagara Falls." That's all we heard. They just said they want to go to Niagara Falls, and we said, "Okay." So they didn't tell us much else, but the plan was that we were going to camp, I believe. Yeah, we were going to camp for lodging, and we were going to drive up, be there for a couple of days, and come back. Sounds awesome. So we get in the car and we drive. I believe we're about halfway there, and then Worm and Kiefer mentioned to me and Jake, they mentioned about going to Canada. And I'm like, I got real no desire to go to Canada. And I was like, why? And they were like, we'll just go in just to turn around and come back to say that we did it. And after a long convincing of them trying to convince me to go do this, because I'm like, dude, it's stupid. Like something's going to happen. We're going to get caught up. Like we're not going to blah, blah, blah. All the worst case scenarios could happen. Like we're going to end up getting arrested or something. And they were like, no, 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 we won't. We'll be fine. We'll be fine. So eventually they convinced me to do it. And then they ask us, what kind of IDs did we bring with us so that we can do this? They have never mentioned, like when we were planning, like the small plan we had for about, I think we only planned for maybe like 48 hours. But they never mentioned that we were going to fucking go to Canada. Like that would have been important. Now, for me, or they both had on them, they brought their driver's license, their social security cards, and their birth certificates, I believe, Worm and Kiefer. I didn't know that I was supposed to bring any of that, but I did have on me. I had my driver's license and I did have my school ID. So, I mean, it was at least an ID. but I had my driver's license, like my, you know, Ohio driver's license. And Jake didn't have anything. Nothing. I don't even think he had a school ID on him. So we were like, I don't think we're gonna. I'm now very scared. Like, dude, it's not gonna work. It's not gonna work. So as we're driving up there, we, they keep talking to us, but we go ahead and we stop at a local Walmart or Meijer, whatever it was on the way, and we get some supplies for camping. We we already have firewood. We brought firewood with us, so we had that solved. We had, lighters and stuff like that with us, but we stopped and we got some food that we could cook on the campfire. So we all got like cans of baked beans because we thought that'd be really easy. I think we got some. I don't think we got hot dogs because we didn't want them to go bad as we were still driving and stuff. But we might have, because I think we had a cooler. We might have got hot dogs, got some like Gatorades, and that's about it. That's all I remember. And then we kept going. So we drive up there, and it was the first night, and we decided to. Okay, yeah, okay. I'm just making sure I didn't miss anything on the in the lead up here, like the setup. So we get there. It's the first night, and we decide to go ahead. I think we tried to find a campground, and we started looking around for campgrounds as we're driving up there, and we realized that in January in New York, it's very cold, very snowy, and there aren't any campgrounds that are open at all. The only ones that are like the permanent RV ones, and that's definitely not what we got. We got Kiefer's stepmom's Grand Prix, I think it was. So that fell through, and all of us were like freshmen and sophomores in college, so none of us had enough money for a hotel. So we're like, okay. So first night we decide, all right, we're gonna try to cross the border. Might as well, right? Remember, our plan is to drive in, drive across, just turn around in Canada and come back. We get to the US side, we tell them our plan. They said it's cool and let us go. We drive to the Canada side. We say that to them, and it's a no go. It's basically a no, and a big reason is because we have firewood in the trunk. Turns out, if you didn't know, it is illegal in most counties to cross county lines with firewood due to parasites and different things that live in trees. You can cross county lines with firewood, you can, but sometimes it like can be illegal. We learned this in certain areas that is illegal. To cross state lines, it's can be even more illegal, and to cross federal lines, national lines, if you will, that's a very big no go. So Canada turned us down and turned us around, which I'm like, this is exactly what we wanted anyway. But I believe where we were still technically on the bridge. We never made it. Like there was like a middle section. We never made it all the way over. So we went back to the US side. During this moment, when we were talking to the Canada side, this is how I think it went down. My brain could be dissolving something. Like I could be on the wrong side, but it doesn't. But I'm pretty sure I'm correct in all of this. I know the story I'm about to tell is where we were. I believe that we never actually made it to Canada, that we had to turn around somewhere like right in the middle. But during this debacle, because we're explaining this to them and they're obviously not having it, the US side people, like, either they changed shifts or you don't come back to the exact same people. So when finally Canada said no and they turned us around and we came back to the US side, it was not the same people that just said that we could do this. I think that I want to say they like switched shifts in the middle of this because, like none of them knew what the hell was going on. But so now we're back on the US side. Okay. So we get here, we're coming back and we're trying to tell the US side that we're just trying to go over there, turn around and come back. That's all we were doing. They don't believe it. They think it sounds like we're up to something, so they immediately start asking for our IDs. Worm and Kiefer give them their 4 IDs or 3 IDs because they have their driver's license, birth certificate, and social security cards. I give my driver's license and I say, I'm sorry, like, I don't have a second ID, but here's my school ID, which does have your name on it. And then obviously your school. Um, it might have my birth date or something, which then confirms back to my driver's license. And then they get to Jake's window. I don't have one. So that's not good. So then immediately they're like, get out of the car. So we're getting out of the car because now they're curious as to what the hell's happening. And we cannot explain to them what's going on. They just don't believe it. So then they ask us, do you guys have any weapons? And I'm not for sure if everyone did, like if Kiefer and Worm did have pocket knives. I think the three of us had pocket knives and we're like, yes, in our, right pocket, whatever. I don't know if I think they probably grabbed them. I don't remember all those details, but I remember that they asked Jake, do you have any weapons on you? And he goes, I don't know. It's my brother's coat. So I don't know if I have any. It's like, so now it's not going well. It's not going well. So then they take us inside and they start questioning us just over and over about what we're doing, why we're trying to get back to the US, like what we're doing, who is this guy, that kind of stuff. And then they take our cell phones at one point, and yeah, they have our phones at one point, and we're still the four of us are in the room, and we're trying to come up with plans as to how can we prove that Jake is a citizen. Like he doesn't even have an ID. Like it's like I don't even think he owned one at this point. So we came up with the only thing we could come up with was like our tennis picture because Jake and I were on the tennis team for our college. So we were like, well, if you pull up that, you'll see the picture in the roster. At least places him at the college, and then everything about him is American. So they come back in though, because they had our phones. And they have Jake's phone. And they open up, they show us a picture on Jake's phone. Now this is back in flip phone days, so the qualities are very grainy. But show us a flip phone, and on it is a picture of Jake. Now, before this, months prior to this moment, we were at my house, and we live in rural America, so owning guns is normal, and owning a few accessories is normal. So there's a picture of Jake holding an assault rifle in one hand and a shotgun in another hand, with like a sling of bullets. I can't think of what it's called. Bandolier of like bullets. Might have been shirtless. Might have had a bandana on. Just a stupid. Us just being stupid, taking a picture and just holding it, taking a picture, and they come back and show us this picture. Jake's. So now it's like, oh, buddy, the person that is here that doesn't have an ID said he didn't know he had a weapon on him. Now has this picture on his phone. So then I had to go and try to explain my dad and what's happening, and that this makes it look like we're Americans, dude. Like, come on, we've been there for a long time. Finally, they do let us go. They eventually believe us. I don't remember I think the final was just like, dude, like I think they're either gonna have to put us in jail or just let us go. So they did let us go. So then now it's super late at night. Campgrounds are closed, and we don't have anywhere to go or anything. And it's super late, so like everything's closed. So we go to a Walmart parking lot, and we're hungry. So we tried our best to crack open the beans. Well, we cracked open the beans and did our best to eat them. I did manage to eat, I think, almost an entire can, if not a can and a half, of baked beans. I think I did. Of just cold, raw baked beans in a parking lot. And then we had to sleep. The Kiefer and Worm were in the front, so they had the two seats that kind of laid down, but they couldn't lay down too much because me and Jake were in the back. And I think eventually Jake took the floor of the car, or I took the floor. It was the worst night of sleep that I absolutely ever tried to get in my entire life. And then the next day we did wake up, and also in January the Niagara Falls was like frozen, and not like frozen cool. I just don't think there was like anything to look at because the water like wasn't even flowing, I don't think. So wasn't that cool? So then the next day we did me and Jake stayed at like this little like free Niagara museum thing, and Kiefer and Worm did go over to Canada, and they had that experience, and then we were able to see them from the other side and kind of wave for a moment, which is pretty cool. And then they were able to get back right back in, because turns out if you just had the right IDs, and if if we had been told to properly plan for this, at least I could have had at least another ID. But it is what it is. It's what it is. But yeah, so yeah, that's how I got detained at the border. So when people ask me about fears, I'm like, look, I know that that's a fluke, and like we didn't plan for that moment. Like I know, but even something as simple as that went that wrong. It's like, this is my luck. This is my luck. I should just stay in the U.S., man. I should just stay in the U.S. Okay, well that's that. Let's move on. This episode for the Philosophy Corner, we are going to be bringing to you one of the greatest thoughts of all thoughts that have ever been thought, and have since this thought has been thoughted on by many thoughtists with their own thoughts. Imagine, everyone thinks, like everyone throughout the day, everyone thinks, and like not everyone plays basketball, not everyone plays video games, not everyone does anything, but everyone thinks, like everyone has to think, like it just happens. But imagine having an original thought. First of all, just imagine having an original thought. I heard this one time, that if you say a sentence of like 15, I think it has to be like 15 random words together in a sentence that makes sense, there's a, whatever the chance was, it was like only like a 1 in 100th chance that no one's ever said that sentence before. So you have to go to like 20 words for it before. So we were hiking one time in the Red River Gorge, and we were just coming up with the stupidest. This might have been the first trip we ever took, where it was me, Kiefer, Christian, and our other buddy met up with us halfway through. And we were saying stuff like, the purple fox burrowed under the weasel's home and came through the trap door to steal the roasted ox before the evil canary could sit on the hippo. I know that was the stupidest sentence I think I've ever said, but that's like what we were trying to come up with to try to be original. And when you are hiking and you get in that moment of like that kind of like hiker's high, and things just kind of become funny and just become, I don't know, you just become kind of in that silly moment. It was the funniest stuff. Anyway, that has nothing to do with what I was talking about. But imagine having a thought so good that it is, revered and cherished and thought about for thousands of years afterwards. And that's what we're going to do, is we're going to study, or not study. I'm going to explain to you, I'm going to tell you about that one of those. If you don't know it, you should go, and there's a couple of YouTube videos on it. There's a lot of YouTube videos on it. But I would encourage you to read it yourself if you've never actually read it. And it's, I would say original text, but I can't read the original writing. But you've never read it. But The Allegory of the Cave, written by Plato. Now if you know Plato, then Plato wrote down things, and he always used Socrates as his character inside of his stories. And so this thought, it may be Socrates, it may not, because Socrates also famously didn't write things down. I believe it was known that he either... Hello. This that I'm recording right now is way after when I recorded the podcast that you're currently watching. But I need to step in here and explain something, because I do a very terrible job of explaining it right here. So Socrates is a famous philosopher on his own, but Socrates... A little bit of weed in my beard. But Socrates famously didn't write things down, because he thought that writing things down made you lazy, because he thought the philosophy was a living thing that existed between people, and you needed to, think and then express that and be able to convey those ideas. So he didn't write things down. But Plato was his student, and Plato is Socrates' student. But Plato wrote things down, and when Plato wrote things down, in almost every one of his works, whenever he needed a character, he used Socrates as his subject. So this is the Socratic problem, is you don't know what is from actual Socrates' own philosophy and what is just written as a character and a subject of Plato's own philosophies. So this is something that goes back and has just always been argued in things, but I do a shit job explaining that there, and that's what it is. So that this is called the Socratic problem, if you are interested in that. But anyway, back to the podcast. See you. Whatever, but this is written in the Republic, and this is kind of the precursor to the theory of forms that Plato gets into, but that's not today. So this is the precursor, because this thing stands alone. The Allegory of the Cave stands alone. So the way that it's written is, in the Allegory of the Cave, Socrates is the main character, and the main character is talking to another man. And I don't remember that guy's name. I don't even know if it has a name. But Socrates is explaining a situation, the situation I'm going to explain to you. So kind of in the example of the way that it's going to happen here, because when you're reading it, you got to remember that. So in the way that we're going to talk about it, basically, I'm acting as the Socrates right now as I'm explaining the situation, and you would be the man in the story where I'm explaining it to, and I'm going to be like basically asking you the questions in that way. So that's kind of how it kind of switches. So if you read it, it's written that way. So it's a dialogue between Socrates and a person, and he's like, "Well, think this, think that." So instead of me trying to talk in that sense of Socrates saying that, I'm gonna just do it and just explain it anyway. So the allegory of the cave is this: imagine that it's a group of prisoners. We're gonna say three because I just want to give it a number. I don't remember if it's 3 or 5, 7, 9, 10. It doesn't fucking matter. But there are a group of prisoners, and they are in a cave. They've been in this cave since birth. All they've ever known is this cave. On top of that, not just being in the cave, but these prisoners are positioned in a way to where they are sitting side by side, but they are staring straight at a blank wall. They cannot move their head. They cannot see their own body. They cannot see the people next to them. They cannot speak. I think they do speak. I think they do talk, but they cannot see their own body. They cannot see each other. They can't see anything. They're just staring directly ahead their entire life at a blank wall. Right. So that's all they know. Also in philosophy, there's a lot of times where parameters are set, and the parameters themselves put you in a box. Like what I just said, like there's a lot of questions that are like, well, were they able to communicate like, I am this, are you there, are you there? I don't like, that's where you got to read the text, kind of figure that part. I don't know those nuances, but in philosophy, what they do is they just set the parameters. You agree to the parameters because you understand that you're thinking about the thought that's coming, and to get to the thought and how it works, you kind of have to have rigid rules sometimes. So that's what we're setting here, is the rigid rules that we're having, so that way we can expand the thought inside of those rigid rules. So the rigid rules basically is that, just imagine these people, this is their entire life, is their head is fixed. They can't see their body, they can't see each other. They're staring blankly ahead at this blank wall. Now behind them, there's basically, imagine there's a wall behind them as well. But now this is what that's all the prisoners are not aware of anything I'm about to explain to you. All they're aware of is that wall in front of them. Now for you, because remember, I'm Socrates and I'm speaking to you because we're imagining this. Now, behind these people, there's a wall, and there's a walkway that humans can walk on this walkway behind the wall, and they're going to hold sticks up, and on the sticks are going to be puppets, kind of like puppets, but they're going to be images, like a tree and an owl, and I don't remember the examples that are said, but there are images of real world things, and all the animals, humans, those kind of things, right? So they're being held up on puppets, but the humans that are walking, holding them, are behind this wall, so you're not able to see them, because above the wall, so if this is the wall where the people are walking, prisoners are sitting right here, looking this way. I'll also put a diagram here on the page so you can see it in just a second. So there's a wall here. Prisoners are looking at this wall. Oh, it's my neighbor. I just heard a noise right there. They're sitting here looking this way. There's a wall. The people can walk behind this, holding the puppets up here. Over here, there's a fire that's sitting right here. So the fire is casting a shadow against these puppets. The shadow is then being projected onto the wall in front of these prisoners. So the prisoner's entire life has been these images on the wall. There may have been stories, there may have been interactions of the puppets. I don't know that fine detail. But their entire existence in world and reality is this wall. Now, I want to, for me, as we're going through, because the allegory of the cave is studied in so many different philosophy classes and so many different angles, and everyone you talk to kind of gives you a different perspective, and that's why it's great. But I want to quickly just highlight a few of these aspects so we can make sure that we understand them together. Now you can go. There's a lot deeper things on these. So this is not a, like, Randall knows all here. This is a very basic, maybe not even a 101 course in college. I don't know what course this is. This might be a 001 course. I have no idea. This might be a 601 or a 001 course. This might be kindergarten level stuff we're talking about, or it might be college level. I have no idea. So hopefully this is just a diving board for you to jump into the allegory of the cave, because it's beautiful to think about. But I want to call your attention to a few things. We have a few subjects and a few objects that we want to think about. We have the prisoners themselves. We have the fire. We have the puppets. We have the puppeteers, right? So we have a few different aspects here. So just remember those kind of key moments. So this is where the questions start. So now that we have these parameters and we are having this reality that is expressed to these prisoners in front of them, what you if someone, so we'll say you, we'll say you, I think it is you. I think the way you asked it is you. If you took one of the prisoners and you were able to, unshackle them and remove them, like stand them up and show them the scene, show them what's happening, show them the other two prisoners sitting there, show them the wall, walk them behind the wall, show them the humans that are walking, show them the puppet, the sticks, show them the fire, show them the light, right? So you're basically showing them, then you're showing them, ultimately you're showing them the light, you're showing them the truth of what's happening here, right? But in doing that, wouldn't it be painful? It'd be painful to that prisoner, wouldn't it? Because that prisoner's never looked at the light. They've only ever been in darkness and seen the shadows. They've seen light, slight light. But if you're staring directly at the fire for the first time, it would be painful. And then not only that, it would be an awakening. It would be an enlightening. It would be I don't remember if it's the blue or the red. I think it's red pill, blue or the red pill. But it would be like the red pill moment of like what woke you up. So then imagine what would, and then you tell that prisoner, like once they gotta, or if you let them choose, wouldn't they? Because now, sorry, I'm getting a lot of things mixed together. That person then, so when they also looked at the light, it would be painful, but they would also lose the ability to see the shadows now. Because once your eyes get adjusted here and you're standing on like the other side, like when you're looking at the light, you can't see the shadows. So then for them, wouldn't it be natural for them to want to return to what they knew? Because what they knew as reality, these shadows, these, what's a car, this reality that they know, they would want to return to that. So they would probably go back and sit back down voluntarily and stay in where they are, right? But what if you grab that same prisoner and you drug him up to the mouth of the cave and you took him out of the cave and you showed him reality, not just the image of what was happening in the cave, but the actual reality. And you did not let him return out of choice. You took his choice away from him and you forced him to stay up there with you. Now you obviously I would say that you made him comfortable. So like you fed him and you gave him water and you answered all the questions, right? So that's basically where we're fully, you're making this person stay. So they're looking at the sun, the true light, the true truth. They're seeing the sun. They're seeing what actual trees are. They're seeing how, nature interacts, where rabbits, I don't know why I keep going back to rabbits. Rabbits eat, I think I saw a rabbit the other day. Rabbits eat the grass, and different animals eat the animals, and he's seen how the ecosystem works, and he sees the world and the reality for what it is. And he like embraces it, because once you realize, like, oh, this is what a tree really is. It's not the shadow that I saw, and it's not, it's not that puppet. So because like you could imagine that in his world, when it was originally the shadows on the wall, that he could perceive the people walking as a god, maybe, or perceive them as a truth bearer or whatever, a middleman, if you will. But now that he's stepped outside of that, he's realized that those people are the middle. So now that he has all of this knowledge and this understanding, now you task that prisoner with, actually, I don't even think you task him with it. I believe the prisoner at this point, if you asked him, what do you want to do? Do you want to go back to your old ways? Or do you want to stay here? Or do you want to go tell the others what you've learned? He chooses to go tell the others what he's learned. And he goes back to the cave, and he goes back to his fellow prisoners, and he does everything he can to convince them of this truth, of the world outside of the cave, that what they're looking at. And he's trying to explain that you're seeing shadows and puppets, and trying to explain fire, and trying to explain people walking behind this, and explain walking, and explaining. He's trying to explain the cave for what it is, for them to grasp that, but he can't even really do that for them to understand. And then he also has to explain the outside, the actual reality of the world. And in the allegory, the question then like asks, would they stay or would they go? So I'm going to give you a minute to just kind of think, and I'm going to think for a second on everything that I've just kind of said about the allegory, because I've just kind of painted, like I said, I've painted the rigid rules, I painted those, and then now I've just kind of painted the whole, um, the narrative of what happens throughout the story. So now we're going to get into the question kind of and thinking about it portion, but let me take a moment and let me think, to make sure I didn't miss anything, and to make sure that I have my thoughts collected, because it is a big thought and I don't want to lead anyone down a weird path or anything. But I like I said, this is just me doing my portion of it. Please go study this. Like it's a thought that has lasted for thousands of years. It's fucking beautiful. Like it is. Philosophy is the one thing, in my opinion, that ties everybody together. Because, like I said, everybody thinks. You can't help it. Now, some people can't critically think, or don't want to critically think, or don't want to learn. That's fine, whatever. But everyone thinks. But anyway, let me think for a second, and I'll get right back to you. Okay. I think I'm good. So now, let's think about what we just talked about. So throughout the story, like I said, I brought your attention to the prisoners. So we'll call him prisoner one. Prisoner one's the one that got up, and the one that we showed the cave out, prisoner one. And then we have the other two prisoners, doesn't matter. Prisoner one, prisoners. And then we have the fire, we have the puppets, we have the people holding the puppets, we have the cave itself, we have the world outside, but also this. So this is where, especially like if you're ever reading parables in the Bible, to where they get somebody, I don't remember who it was that explained this to me, but it changed my outlook on almost any story, and also it's your life as well on this one. But we'll use it in the allegory before we get into parables and Bibles and stuff like that. But in the allegory, so you have your characters of the prisoner, we'll go with prisoner one. You have prisoner one when they were imprisoned. You have prisoner one when they were allowed to see the cave. You also have prisoner one when they chose to go back to being a prisoner. You have prisoner one when you took them outside of the cave. And you have prisoner one when they went back into the cave. And then you have prisoner one when they were like at whatever happens down in the cave, which is where we end our, like where the allegory ends is us discussing what happens. But if you continued the story, then you would have prisoner one after the story of what we discuss. The reason I held him up is now you have one character subjectively, one character objectively, so one character throughout that whole thing, but you have six different subjective characters in that you can talk and think about, but it's one person. That might seem simple, but think about that. So the reason that's important is because it's just like ourselves in our like on our own human journey is like actually my favorite things I've ever done is I wrote a paper in college. It was my best paper I ever wrote. It was a philosophy paper and it was titled "The Brain is Not Elastic." And it's basically after every experience you have, every day, every moment, every second, the person that you were, you can never go back to who you were. The brain does expand, but it doesn't go back to like how it was. You know, it's always kind of different afterwards. But the idea is that you're never the same person. So in this, you have the different characters, and the whole paper was written about this idea that was brought to me. But that's the six different characters. So when you think about it, that's how I'm going to ask some questions. Okay. So think about that too about any story. Like if you had the three, what the fuck are the stories? Um, I'm mixing Goldilocks and Three Pigs. I was about to say Three Pigs with the soup, but if you had like Goldilocks, like if you look at, I got to think about the damn stories. Oh, let's do the Three Pigs. That one's easy. So like the Three Pigs. I was trying to think of this if it was the Three Pigs or the Goldilocks, but the Three Pigs. If you have pig one, pig two, pig three. So you have like what was it? Straw, brick, and wood. I think, and you have a wolf. I don't know why a wolf can blow so fucking hard. Ayo. But then you have wolf. But then if you look at you have those four characters. But then you have wolf prior to all attacks. You have pig straw prior to attack, pig straw after attack. You have wood pig prior, wood pig after. But you have wolf prior one, wolf after one, wolf after each one. The wolf grows, the pigs grow. So there's now I'm butchering putting all this like into words, but now you're seeing that each pig now has at least 2 to 3 different subjective characters that they played and who you can study because you can isolate those different characters in those progressions, if you will. That's important because of the allegory of the cave. So this is where the you take it bigger is the cave is the reality that we live in. How much of the reality that we live in is orchestrated and fixed and propagated in ways that we don't even know about, right? So that would be like the cave. Try to do this as you move forward. Now that we've talked about the cave, is try to identify what cave you're living in right now. Because I'll tell you this is if you think you're living outside the cave, no matter where you are in this, you're not. You can't you can't always you can't that's okay. Sorry, I'm kind of putting in the next one. We might talk about the theory of forms next, which is Plato's next topic that he brings into this. We might bring it into because then it relates back to, no, I'm saying that the theory of forms is not necessarily like wisdom of all wisdom and truth, but it's kind of like his like kind of religious kind of push on things, at least in my eyes. But try to identify, and you can identify the caves like the caves you're living in. They can be different caves. Like think about like if you're at a job, like there is a cave. Like I was a general manager of a restaurant for a while, right? And not that I'm trying to manipulate the staff or anything like that, but there is a culture, a a set of, well, there's a set of rules that are set to you by like the corporate like store of who you work for, but then there's also a set of rules and policies that are set by. For me, I worked for a franchisee, so there's a set of rules and so rigid guidelines. And then there is me. It's like, what role did I play in this cave? So the cave would be where we're working. For me now, I'm kind of the person that's orchestrating. Okay, what are our goals in sales? What are our goals in um, getting our costs down? What are our goals in growing staff salaries? What are these goals? So, what do I need to project to them to do? What illusions do I need to give? Hey, we'll do this incentive if you guys do this for me. Or if it's but think about ways in your life, not only the contracts like, oh, I'm going to stick it to the man and break out, but in what ways, what puppets are you seeing? That's the way of breaking out. Like, what things are you seeing that are kind of puppets? But in what ways in your life are you the person holding the puppets? Like, in what ways are you the person that you know what you're doing is wrong? Because if you're a person that's walking through and you know out outside of the cave and you're walking holding this stick up, knowing that these people can't move, in what ways are you doing that in your life? Think about in what ways are you the fire in your life? So, in what ways are you illuminating these lies to other people? Now, you can also think about the person that's walking, holding the stick in the fire themselves as their separate subjects, and they could also be maybe they're in, maybe that person that's walking the holding stick is also imprisoned, and their entire existence is just walking, holding that stick. We don't know, but you can think about that further. But think about ways, which way are you playing each character? More importantly, is think about when you have been, because we've all been prisoner one, and you have that moment of where either someone or something grabs you and pulls you. I had a problem with my elbow earlier, and that just didn't help anything. Pulls you or shows you the pill. So when Morpheus is like, "Do you want the red pill?" or however hell he talks, and then what do you do with that knowledge? When you were enlightened to certain things, like like if you realize that your company, like say if your company's taking advantage of someone at a certain level, you become aware of it. Do you just step back in line? Do you try to run out the cave, like try to learn more, gain more before you do anything? Do you try to tell other people? So think about as you're going through, as you're going through your life or however long, think about these different subjects. Think about the prisoners that are still in prison. Think about the prisoner that's in light. Think about the prisoners that are being told the truth that aren't listening. Think about the people that are carrying the puppets. Think about the person that lights the fire. Think about the person that cooks the food for the people in the cave. Think about the person that delivers the food. Think about the person that is the one that grabbed the first prisoner and walked him out. Think about the prisoner that is standing outside the cave, choosing to go back. Think about the prisoner that chose to go back into being a prisoner. Think about all of these individual characters and what role they play in this aspect of the cave, and then try to relate that to things that you see and do and talk about. Because even things like here, I'll use one. Like one of like if I always say, like I mentioned, leaving the country is a greatest fear of mine. But I also will then say because America is the greatest country. But then if you look like statistically, in a lot of ways, it's not. And for a lot of people, it's not, right? But at the end of the day, to me, is that, like I see and recognize those flaws, but it is like, this is home. This is where I am. And I love it for the things that it does bring me. Like I do like my freedom of speech. aspect. I know that I'm not saying that we have that. Like, I'm not saying that we're the only country that has these things. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if I look at the country as the allegory of the cave, I openly admit that in this, like in the, like I'm not saying I'm blind to what our country does or the horrors that our country does, or I won't stand up or speak out about it. But I'm saying that I'm basically I'm sometimes the person that stands at the mouth of the cave saying, I'm not the. I guess I'm not a soldier, but I'm not a person with a spear saying this is my cave. But I understand that this is my cave, and I understand that there are flaws here. But I am choosing the cave, baby. I'm choosing the cave. But I also understand that in certain aspects, like there's been things that I've said and done, and like I said, being real and real here, like things that I've said and done or perpetrated. That's the right word. Said again. Um, that turns out to be like false or lies or anything like that, because you get fooled or bamboozled, or because you're just shackled inside of that. And I think that we're also at a point in society with both, dude, with all people, especially when you look at politically, where no matter what side, what middle, what top, bottom, left, right, middle ground, I don't care, whatever cave you choose to be in, I feel like there's a reckoning coming where we're all kind of walking out of our caves and we're realizing that we're all on the same fucking mountain. But realizing that when I'm coming out of my cave and you're coming out of your cave, dude, we may have been neighbors, but our shackled prisons have been much different experiences. And now that we're coming out of that, we got to be very respectful. So it's important, as you think about the allegory of the cave, is not only relate this to your life and do that dissecting, but then also start to do that to other people. Because if you can recognize, oh shit, like like if you talked about, like, okay, here's one of my favorite subjects is UFOs. I love the alien conversation, right? So for me, like, I'm not saying, I don't want to say anything. I'm not making claims right now. But if I, if you took someone that said aliens are absolutely not real, they're locked in, it's all a hoax, blah blah blah, won't hear anything against it, they're shackled in there, and then you try to take them all the footage that the government has officially released, and there's even high res stuff that's came out now, and even like experiences that I or people that can share, like firsthand accounts of different things, you realize that, oh, I'm the person that's unlocking this first prisoner. Or, oh, actually, I think I'm the person that's unlocking the first prisoner, but I'm actually the second prisoner. And that's eye opening, is when you think you're in a different role, but then upon reflection, you realize you were actually in a different role. You may think you're the liberator and you're the person holding the damn puppet. Anyway, that's the allegory of the cave. We can go on forever putting different comparisons like that in there. But spend some time thinking about it. There are some really cool graphic cartoons out there on YouTube of the allegory of the cave. Some of them came out years ago, and they explain it in ways. And like I said, if they say anything that's different or whatever, that's the beauty of it, because it's all different. All opinions are different. All thoughts are different. Some of them are straight contradictory. Some of them are great. Some of them are awesome. Some of them are terrible. Some of them are miserable. But really think about the allegory of the cave. It's a dope, dope, dope piece of philosophy. And we may get into our theory of forms, but think about that. And I think that's all I got on the allegory of the cave. That's it. All right, we are back with our much anticipated, much waited, the official Cricket in the Cabin and Rusty Buckets Gaming and Randall Clay double stamp, triple stamp, touch blue to make it true, certified Survivor Mount Rushmore list is happening right here, right now. Like I laid out, Mount Rushmore to me is people that laid foundations, people that changed the game, people that created things, created plays, created moves, created moments, those kind of things. Now, there are certain, that's about all the parameters I put on it. Now, certain people, I did ask all of my Survivor fantasy friends, and most of them have chimed in, and I'm going to include some sound bites that they have, and also just their in general rankings and some of their comments, because I have some in text form as well. What we'll do is we are going to go through and define them. For me personally, though, I think that the way Survivor is set up is how you vote people out. They make a jury, and then the jury votes for you to be the winner. I think the beauty and the purity of that has to be kept true. So, my official stance, here's my stamp for it coming up. My official stance to be on Mount Rushmore, you got to be a winner. Got to be a winner. I think that some of the greatest players of all time have not won the game. I think some of the greatest players of all time will never win the game. But I also think that some of the greatest players of all time, as we say it, they are, because they don't have the win, I don't think you can put them over some of the greatest winners of all time. Now, I think that sometimes there have been winners that have been chosen because it was, up between a turd sandwich and a flaming bag of dog poop. I think that's happened, and I'm not going to name what seasons or anything, but I think that some of the best players are not won. But when it comes down to who's like the greatest players of all time, I feel like if you're going to list the greatest players of all time, no matter what your debate is, if it's between two people, if one of them's a winner and one of them's not, getting that final jury to vote for you is such a huge thing that just getting to the final is amazing. And also, I think it's important because it comes down to the jury, is you have to manage your jury. For example, and I'm going to use, before we even start this, one of my first examples that I'm going to use is my man Lyle, or better known as the two-letter demon. I know it doesn't make sense as much, but one of his Mount Rushmores, the first person we're talking about, is Russell Hantz. And I agree with his opinion, and I'm going to throw his soundbite in right here.
But I think I'm going to go a little controversial, and I'm going to go with Russell Hantz as my fourth spot. He, again, never won, but at the time when he was playing Survivor, I think he played one of the better games that I've seen. The unfortunate timing of his when he played, I think, was people, which he kept trying to say, and I feel like when he would talk about it, was that he was hoping people would respect his game. But I don't think that happened, unfortunately. They were just all still too caught up in getting blindsided by him or, voted out by him. And couldn't focus on the fact that the dude played a heck of a strategic game. It is wild to me. Like one of the better moves I've ever seen. Now, he didn't obviously force it to happen, but things he did caused it to happen. JT giving up his idol to him from another tribe was because he knew he was making it look like an all-girls alliance. And that's why JT gave him that idol. That's insane. I've never seen someone think of that in the entire game of Survivor. That's wild.
I think that Russell was an amazing player. I think he's an amazing strategist. The fact that he found idols without clues, the fact that he worked that hard, I think that Russell set up what an actual idol hound is moving forward. And I think that he laid that foundation, and he also was, in my eyes, in the realm of the world of Survivor, he was a true villain, but he was so good at it. So good at it. Like, for example, like I wish that I knew more, because I don't really look at any of the extra stuff, like behind the scenes. I only watch the show for the purity of the show. But the move of where JT gave him the idol because they thought it was like a girls' alliance, I really wish that there was more there because the way that it is produced, yes, no matter what, it's JT. It's a mistake on JT's part. Like it absolutely is. But the way that it was produced, it makes. I wanted to see if Russell played somehow did more with the acting or did more playing it up somehow to one get some of the heat off of JT and then also to maybe give some credit back to Russell for that. But anyway, Russell's great, but the fact of Russell is when he does get to the end, he hasn't gotten the win. So that's where I think it takes that little bit more to be able to actually get the win. Now you could say, well, they were a bitter jury or exactly. That's the thing is that season not no strategy will work every single season, but that season he didn't use the right strategy. He needed to adapt. If he was that good, he could have adapted or argued it more. I think that there for him there was a sense of too much arrogance going into his finals. That maybe that, but he also wronged some wrong people. But I mean, he fooled some of the greatest, man. Like in Heroes Villains, he got Tyson to vote himself out. So like, come on, man. So I agree. I think Russell is one of the greatest players. But let's get into it and let's start rolling. My first person that I'm gonna put and I'm gonna defend on Mount Rushmore is this is an easy one. The first person that when I think of Mount Rushmore of Survivor, first person that comes to mind is the one and only Boston Rob Mariano of Mariano Constructions, aka Amber Burkage's husband. Yeah, because also shout out to Amber Burkage here. I think Amber Burkage does not get enough credit. I think that in her season, I think that it looks like Rob does push her around a lot. But when you look at her when she came back for Winners at War, I think you realize, at least now in their relationship, how much of the actual rock she is for Rob. And I think that that might not have been portrayed as either. It might not have been then because they were so young, because, they were like just in love there and she kind of just listened to him. But I think she might have had a lot more strategy because she's a lot more intelligent and she's a lot more aware and a lot more like compassionate than what we saw, at least in my opinion. Could have just been because she was young and not a mother, but I'm gonna stand up for Amber Burkage because she's cool. Amber Mariano, if you will. But Boston's first one on, and with Boston Rob of our group, me, Lyle, Tucker, all have him on our Mount Rushmore. But then also Preston P. Preston also said before, like his opinion, he said that it is really hard, and I'm gonna put up his soundbite too. To have that it's hard to argue with Jeff Probst's lists, and that he shouts it out. And then the way that he did his, he was like, if you just look at individual seasons, which I love the way he did it. So we'll get more into his in just a minute. Cause I'm actually probably just gonna play his entire soundbite straight through, and then we'll jump in and talk about that here in just a minute. Um, but I think that Boston Rob is on the list for a few reasons. One, if you look at All Stars and the couple relationship that him and Amber did make, not only changed Survivor, it changed every reality show from then on out. I know reality shows were popular before and there were couples, but they were the ultimate like relationship, a couple relationship in a Survivor or a showman's. And they were, I mean, they stuck together and they're still married and they have like 4 children, 4 daughters. So it's, sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought there. So he not only changed that game, but he changed every game moving forward because it made it to where it showed how big of a threat two people really is. Also in All Stars, he did the with Lex, the way that he won. I mean, AI kind of screwed him over. Yuppers. But two, like, dude, you can't throw your whole game away expecting that Rob's gonna throw his whole game away, because if it would have came to you, he would have been like what, fifth. But the way that he also went back to Lex and then told Lex and stuff, I think that that also shows one, the devious, and then it also shows the loyalty, like tried to show the respect of the friendship. I don't think it's ever been repaired really, but there's that. But then also when Boston Rob came back, and I don't even know the name of the one that he won. Is it Redemption Island, Exile Island? The one where he played against Russell and he swept the thing. Um, a lot of people say, "Oh, they gave him that win." Blah blah blah. A win's a win. I will always stand on a win's a win. But that was the most dominant win ever. And the way people still fell in line, the way that they did the buddy system, all of those things that happened, he orchestrated. And if they were sheep, a sheep or the sheep needs a shepherd, and the shepherd is intelligent, so credit is where credit's due. Um, like in that season, Russell even says, like, you guys are voting me out. You don't even know what Boston Rob has going on over there. True that, my dude. True that. But I think the Boston Rob is, yeah, I don't think we have to go too much farther because his legacy is huge. But definitely Boston Rob. And I'm going to throw in some of Lyle's sound bites here because he also talks about Boston.
I'm going to go with Boston Rob. One, because of just how good at challenges he is. I know that there's a lot more to Survivor than just challenges, but I do think that matters. He's so good at puzzles, it's unreal. He is also a physical threat. And then the way he also navigates the game. Like, when he came back and finally won, I mean, it was everyone knows how good he is at the game, yet he still convinces them to not vote him out somehow, which is wild. I think even in, what was it, Heroes versus Villains, that was just a dumb move to vote him out. So I don't think it was like a lack of his gameplay to get voted out. Anyway, moving on.
But Tucker says, Rob, probably the most iconic Survivor player ever. When we talk about Mount Rushmore, it's impossible to not have him. He's laid the foundation for the game to be successful, even a decade after he's played last finalists, Jonathan, and still being coached up by him. Rob was a total package with leadership. He didn't get voted off when he was a tribe captain. Control, and it was probably the most dominant win ever, start to finish. Had the other two finalists saying he's the reason they're at the final tribal council. Granted, it was Philip. Social gameplay, the buddy system, even in Winners at War, people saying how he can lure them in and challenge prowess. Exactly that, too, the lure them in, because Ben has a quote there where Ben says, yeah, as soon as we hit the beach, like Rob says, like Rob started working his magic. I started telling him all my secrets. Like, even a winner is saying that he's working it so easily. And then he says, challenge prowess, both leading team and holding male record for challenge wins to this day over challenge beasts like Ozzy. So yeah, Boston Rob is the absolute man. So officially, we are putting Boston Rob certified touch blue, make it true on the Mount Rushmore. That's what it's called. The second person that I'm going to put on my Mount Rushmore on, I'm going to make it touch blue, make it true certified, is Sandra. Locking it in. Sandra is my number 2. This one, some people don't agree with, but I absolutely do stand on it because won twice, and she won when it wasn't all winners. That statistic alone, a win is a win, but doing it twice is insane. Now, a lot of people get on her because she does the whole, if it's not me, then I'm okay with it. But it's not just that. It's the way that it's done. It's the way that it's floated between the two groups to where if she does float this way, there's always an avenue to come back and not just fear. And then also, she has a way of, hypothetically, if she is floating over, and let's say the target is on, on the sides, she has a really good way of just bumping the target over just one click to someone else, to that way it can still protect her in the future. And I think that she has a good way of being able to do that in picking the person. So I remember in Heroes Villains there was a moment where she went to, I think, Colby and Rupert, but at least Rupert, and was like pleading him to, like, yo dude, you need to work with us. And he didn't. But that's a moment where she was building a connection, and then she bumped the target off, and then went back and was like, yo, you were the target and I saved you, and he still didn't work with her. So like she's able to use that currency really well. So she does do the whole if it's not me, but it's always not just if it's not me, it's anybody. Like I'm cool to vote for anyone. It's always strategic of who she does vote for. There is a here's redacted. This sentence has been redacted because Randall is an idiot. Tucker, I'll cut that out. Redacted. He says that the queen, need we say more, the only two-time winner in seasons that it wasn't a guaranteed second winner, like Winners at War. Some say she gets dragged to the end, which you can say once, but winning twice, hell no, especially in a time frame where returning winner was targeted right away. She also took out one of the greatest villains ever in Russell on the way to her second win. Iconic scene is Russell yelling, "You're either with me or you're against me." Sandra doesn't even look up from taking a nap. "I'm against you." I agree with that. Sandra stands up. She also stands up in Pearl Island. She stands straight up to Johnny Fairplay and she's like, "I can get loud too, motherfucker," and yells back at him, which is really funny. She does a really good job. She has a full personality. She stands up for herself. She's a strong woman. Like when she says anyone but me, that doesn't mean that she's like a push around pissant, dude. She is a very strong woman. She saw through the Johnny Fairplay where she wasn't kind of cutting it with the grandma thing because she still wanted to push his loved one off of that. I think they were walking planks. So yeah, I think that's it with Sandra. If there is a soundbite, I'll listen back to them real quick. I don't think either of them really put them on there. If they did, it's gonna be here.
I also wanted to explain why I'm leaving Sandra off my list. I feel like I've explained this to you before about how I feel about Sandra. I hate that she's called the queen. I don't think she's a master Survivor player. I don't. For example, Heroes vs. Villains, I think she only won because the jury just was mad at Parvati and Russell. So they voted for Sandra. I don't think she played a good game at all. That she even admitted to the jury during the final tribal council that she didn't think she played a great game and that she could have done things way better. Yet she still won. I'm sorry, that was bullcrap. She sits out challenges most of the season. She just didn't do much in that season, I don't think, to win. To be honest, I would need to rewatch Pearl Islands, I think, to kind of call out that one. It's been a long time since I've watched that one. However, I know Heroes vs. Villains, I've seen that one a few times. I've never been impressed with Sandra's game. So that's why she's not in mine. That's all I got for you, buddy. I hope this works.
If not, I just held my hand up for an awkward amount of time for no reason at all. Okay, so we are going to move on to... Let's jump to an honorable mention. We're actually going to jump to an entire list of an honorable mention. I have a friend. She has not seen very much of this. I don't know what I'm supposed to call her on this, so we'll go with Lord Kensington. And from the limited, they've only seen like Heroes, Villains, and then they've only seen, I think, probably like seasons 46, 7, 8, 9, and 50, I think. They said Parvati because I got a picture here. Let me pull it up. Even though I've only watched Heroes v Villains, I probs put Parvati on there. People wanted to get her out since day one, and she was able to make it through and did what she did to do. Form an alliance with Russell, and then with a pukey face, still impressed me a lot. Then she said possibly Genevieve and Q for entertainment purposes. So absolutely, those are definitely honorable mentions with Q and Genevieve there. But we're going to use that to lead into our next one. We're also going to lock in Touch Blue, Make a True, Parv. Locking in Parv. I love Parv as a player. I think that she's great. We can go on and on about Parv and how she's played and this and that and all of those things. The Black Widow Brigade, the way that she orchestrated so many things. But here's why she's on mine solidified is Parv played her role so well. And it wasn't just like the flirty icon or flirty girl, like the sex kitten. It wasn't just that. Yes, she used that, but also with women, she used emotions. With the men, she used emotions. It wasn't just like, I'm sexy. It was also getting emotional, like connections there with him. She was able to use it, and she used her looks so well that, like Lord Kensington said everyone was threatened of like every pretty girl from then on out, basically, or anyone showed a hint of a parv and they're like, we gotta get her out. So she was so good that it targeted an entire class of players coming up, which is impressive. We can go on and on about Parv and how awesome she is. And also, I'll say this one, like, if you don't follow Parv on social media, get on over there. Great stuff. My man, Full Timers List, Parv, he says, Parv, just the idea of an all women's alliance is now a problem because of how she's feared with the Black Widows, were one of the best social games out there, was able to even win an Australia Survivor against Tony Sri and a bunch of foreign Survivor winners and legends when she came in when one of the biggest targets and final spots. Great stuff going on there for Parv. So yeah, we're going to lock in Parv. So that is 3. We have locked in on our list. We have locked in Sandra. I have locked in Rob. And I have locked in Parv. If you don't know, then you do know my last one is coming. And it is not a surprise here, but I do, for what Mount Rushmore is, not being controversial or anything, not wanting to be controversial or anything, I agree with Jeff Probst. Tony. Tony is definitely on there. I think Tony is one of the greatest Survivor players of all time. Myself, Lyle, Preston P. Preston. I might have said his name, so I'm going to mark that out with a redacted. I need a redacted noise. Maybe I'll do this. Maybe I'll go, meep. Then I'll put over top of it, I'll go, redacted. This sentence has been redacted because Randall is an idiot. Meep. That's what we'll do. But Preston P. Preston said Tony, and so did Mr. Fulltimer. Tony's first season, Kagayan, is, in my opinion, one of the greatest seasons, the greatest season of non-returning players. It's probably the greatest season. I'm not going to lock that in, but it's probably the greatest season of non-returning players ever. The Bronze, Brains, Beauties. That has some amazing characters, amazing gameplay, and then also Tony, the way he plays it. The way he is able to completely turn on people, vote someone out, turn back around, lie to them, and get them to vote with them is uncanny. He also has the ability of Russell to find idols like no other business. So I think that what he did is he took Russell's strategy of being able to find the idols. He also took the ability to, I don't know, just realize not only threats, but realize people that he could target and then still get them to vote for him at the end for the winner. Tony is a beautiful player. He's amazing. Now, I do have a soundbite from Lyle saying this.
I think Tony, I think that's an easy one. 2-time winner. I think he only played twice and won twice. Correct me if I'm wrong there.
But I'm going to cut him off and pause him here. I will correct him. He did play 3 times. He also played at Game Changers. He played, but he ran around like an idiot and got voted out very quickly. Like he got the beach and he's like, I'm going for an idol, and ran off into the woods. So it was his 3rd time playing. I think that we got a comment from Tucker here saying, Tony, potentially the greatest player ever. Another 2-time winner coming in, maybe the best season ever. Kagayan and Winners at War. Need we say more? Many returning seasons are hyped up, but we beat every other winner. His personality is electric and too many iconic scenes to name. And that's where Preston P. Preston here has this soundbite.
Hello, Randall Clay. It's your buddy Preston P. Preston here to talk to you about my Survivor Mount Rushmore. I thought a lot about this, and as you and I had discussed previously, I would find it a disservice to pick a different Mount Rushmore as far as impact on the game than Jeff Probst picked, because I think the 4 that he picked, Parvati, Boston, Rob, Sandra, and Tony, obviously, affected the game tremendously in how it's played, and I just don't think that list can really be topped with any collection of 4 players. So
that is officially our Survivor. So here, we'll put it up. Here's a graphic of Mount Rushmore, and here's our 4 pictures with Sandra, Boston Rob, Parvati, and Tony all on it. And then I want to make sure that I covered everything that everybody else said. So I'm going to let the rest of, if I skipped any of Lyle's soundbite, play out here.
I'm going to say Suri. I know she's never won. But I've also, to me, I think she's the best of all time. The way she navigates through the game is unreal, even though people know her game and she still can do it. She somehow makes every single person like her and want to not vote for her, even though they know she's such a big threat. It's incredible.
And then let any of Preston P. Preston's play out here.
The way that I'm defining my Mount Rushmore is quality of play by a winner in their particular season. So I do have a couple of honorable mentions or outside looking in. I got Sarah from Game Changers. Just obviously, it goes without saying, you know, all these three on this outside looking in list played phenomenal games. Sarah, Game Changers, no exception. Yule from Cook Islands, and Sandra and Heroes versus Villains. And that actually Sandra's win is particularly impressive, because everyone that she was playing with, you know, knew how she played, and she still somehow played the exact same game, and won for what at the time was an unprecedented second time. So again, that was particularly impressive as well. But my Mount Rushmore of gameplay by winners of their particular season in no particular order here would be JT from Token Jeans. I think everybody can agree that he just played a masterful game that season. Very out of his element from his background in a lot of ways, and in many other ways his background probably helped him in his season, and he just played a masterful game. Natalie in Blood versus Water, I mean, to come into that season, everybody has essentially their plus one, somebody that they're comfortable with, and to lose hers in the first vote on day one, and essentially to be the only person that played this game without their partner, essentially from the onset, to come and then win that season, and played so impressively. After that would be Tony from his Winners at War win, which actually I think is a very, very impressive win. For a lot of reasons. One, he played amazing that season. He takes down Natalie at the end, even though she, you know, goes to exile and makes her way back and has all these advantages. I do think that, you know, part of that win for him might have been overshadowed by, at the time, what people were saying Natalie's safe decision from the fire making aspect is concerned, because I do think if she takes him on and beats him, she does win that season. But nothing to take away from Tony, you know, becoming the second two-time winner. And I think what's particularly impressive about his second win is that he played a season in Game Changers that he did not win in between. So to win his very first season that he played, to not win his second season, to come back and win his third season of Winners at War, which obviously was an all-star cast. So it can't be understated how impressive it is to win the Winners at War season. And then finally, my Mount Rushmore of winners would be Cochran, actually, and fans versus favorites. I think he just had one of the more impressive journeys. I think a lot of modern players remember, think about Christian Hubicki in this kind of light, but I think Cochran, to go from someone who was underestimated when he first played to a unanimous winner, is just absolutely speaks for itself, speaks volumes for his gameplay. He was unassuming at many times somehow, but also being very looming at the same time, which takes a special skill to do. And I actually think all four players that I read off, maybe with the exception of JT, you could say that they were unassuming yet a looming presence. And I think to be able to pull that over against great competitors always is very impressive. But when I think back on all the seasons of Survivor, the 50 seasons, those are the four Mount Rushmore winning players that I would choose.
I'm also going to finish up here with Mr. Full-Timers. A shout out here. They say he also says, Suri, the social game queen. No one is better at changing a vote and making it seem like it was your idea if it wasn't for a few twist/fire making. She would have been one, but now her threat level is impossible. And then I think that's it. I think that's it for our comments that we have from our Survivor team. But we also did want to mention there was a shout out for, the way Preston P. Preston. I just let his play out. But I like the way that he did his too, saying that individual seasons. He also wanted to shout out JT's, Natalie's, and Cochran's individual seasons, and then Tony's with Cockeyons as well. I think that's a great way to do it. But that wraps up our Mount Rushmore. So I know that it does agree with Jeff Probst here, but I think that Mount Rushmore is Mount Rushmore for a reason, and I want to lock those in. So I just want to move on from that conversation to where now new people are not saying Mount Rushmore. You got to build your own new monument, and that is what it is. That is it for Survivor. So let's go. I think that's it. But I appreciate you guys being here so much, and I can't wait for the next episode. My goal is to get it out weekly. This one has taken over 2 weeks, but that's, like I said, where I'm going to focus on the content. I didn't have the things agreed upon in my head about what I wanted to talk about and do. So we got that done, and here we are, moving on. Thank you so much. Comment down below what was your favorite segment or what you want to see more of, so that way I just know what direction to make sure that we are making that I'm making the content, one, that I care about and that you care about at the same time. I'm not going to make content that I don't care about, first of all. If I don't care about it, there's no way you're going to care about it. But let me know what you think. And yeah, we'll see you later. Thanks, everybody.